Snow drifted gently over the town square, settling on garlands, wooden stalls, and the shoulders of hurried shoppers who moved from light to light with cups of steaming cocoa in their hands. Christmas music floated through the air, cheerful and loud, but at the far end of the square the sound faded into something quieter. That was where Ellie stood, behind a small folding table covered with a worn red cloth that had once belonged to her grandmother. The cloth was thin now, frayed at the corners, but it was clean, carefully smoothed by hands that wanted everything to look right. On the table sat containers of food wrapped in foil and cloth, cornbread still warm from the oven, jars of chicken stew, sweet potatoes mashed with cinnamon, and a few hand pies shaped a little unevenly. A piece of cardboard leaned against the table leg, letters written in marker by Ellie herself, "Mama's Christmas Food." She had drawn a small star beside the words, hoping it would make people stop. Her mama had woken before dawn to cook, even though the stove barely worked and the house was colder than usual. "People will taste love," her mama had said, smiling through tired eyes. Ellie believed her. She believed that Christmas made people kinder, that they would understand food made by hand meant more than shiny boxes and glittering treats. But as the morning passed, Boots walked by without slowing. Eyes glanced, then turned away. Some people smiled politely, others didn't bother hiding their doubt. Ellie shifted her weight, rubbing her hands together to keep them warm. Each time someone stopped at the neighboring stalls, candied apples, fancy cookies, bright ornaments, her heart lifted, then sank when they skipped over her table. A man paused once, lifted the cloth, and quickly set it back down. "Too plain," he muttered before walking away. A woman tugged her child along, whispering something Ellie didn't fully hear, but the tone was enough. By midday, only one jar had sold. Ellie counted the coins twice, as if they might magically multiply. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. This wasn't about her being hungry. It was about going home and telling Mama the truth. The thought made her throat tighten. A gust of wind cut through the square, and Ellie pulled her coat tighter. She looked down at the food, still untouched, still warm, still full of effort and hope. Her voice came out small when she spoke, almost lost beneath the music and chatter. "No one wanted Mama's Christmas food," she said, not to anyone in particular, just to the cold air in front of her. Saying it made it real, and her eyes burned as she blinked fast, refusing to cry. She didn't notice the shadow that slowed nearby or the sound of boots stopping in the snow. She was too busy standing guard over the table, too busy trying to be brave for someone who had believed this day would be different. Ellie was still staring at the table when she sensed someone close, close enough that the cold seemed to pause. A shadow fell across the red cloth, darker and steadier than the others that had passed. She looked up slowly, already preparing her polite smile, the one she used when people glanced and left. Instead, she saw a man standing there who looked as if he had stepped out of a long road rather than a shop. His boots were scuffed and dusted with snow, his coat thick but faded, carrying the marks of years of wear. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, and when he lifted it slightly, his eyes were calm and thoughtful, not rushed like the rest of the crowd. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at the food, really looked at it, as though each dish had a story worth hearing. Ellie's fingers curled around the edge of the table, waiting for the familiar shake of the head. The cowboy bent down, instead, lowering himself until his eyes were level with hers. That surprised her so much she forgot to look away. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and gentle. "Did you make all this?" Ellie shook her head quickly. "My mama did," she said. "She cooked all night." The pride in her voice slipped out before she could stop it. The cowboy nodded, as if that explained everything. He reached out, lifting the lid of one of the jars just a little. Steam curled into the cold air, carrying the smell of herbs and slow-cooked meat. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing it in. When he opened them again, they looked softer, distant somehow, as if the scent had carried him somewhere far away. "This," he said quietly, "smells like something you don't forget." He glanced back at Ellie, studying her face. She saw something shift in him, something heavy easing just a bit. He leaned closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "Smells like home." The word landed gently, but it hit Ellie harder than she expected. Home was a small place with peeling paint and drafts that whistled through the windows. It was Mama humming while she cooked and pretending not to be tired. It was warmth that didn't come from money. Hearing a stranger say that word about their food made her chest ache in a way that felt almost good. The cowboy straightened and reached into his coat. Ellie's heart lifted, then hesitated. People had reached for wallets before, only to change their minds. But he didn't pull out a few coins. He counted bills carefully, placing them on the table one by one. "I'll take all of it," he said, his voice steady. Ellie's mouth fell open. "All of it," she echoed, afraid she had misheard. "All of it," he repeated. Then, instead of walking away, he pulled over an empty crate and sat down right there in the snow-dusted square. He opened a container, picked up a spoon, and began to eat as if there were nowhere else he needed to be. His shoulders relaxed with the first bite. He smiled, slow and real, and let out a breath that looked almost like relief. People passing by began to notice. A cowboy, eating simple food in the middle of the fair, like it was the most important thing in the world. Some slowed, some stopped. Ellie watched as curiosity tugged at the crowd, her heart beating faster, hope stirring again where it had nearly gone cold. The square no longer felt quite so cold. As the cowboy ate, unhurried and content, something subtle shifted around the little table. People who had passed without a second glance now slowed their steps. A couple stopped near the edge of the stall, watching him take another spoonful, his expression calm, almost grateful. When he noticed them, he didn't rush or look embarrassed. He simply smiled and said, "You're missing out." His voice carried easily, cutting through the music and chatter, and it carried something else too, truth. Ellie stood frozen for a moment, hardly daring to move. She watched as the cowboy reached for another container, opening it with care, as if the food mattered. He nodded to himself with the first bite, then spoke louder this time. "Best Christmas meal I've had in years." The words felt big, too big for the small table they stood behind. Heads turned. A woman stepped closer, her curiosity winning over her doubt. "What is it?" she asked. "Made by her mama," the cowboy replied, gesturing gently toward Ellie. Made right. That was all it took. The woman reached for her wallet. Then another person asked if there was any left. Coins clinked into the jar, followed by bills, then more coins. Ellie moved on instinct, handing out containers, her hands no longer numb. Her smile came easily now, bright and surprised, as if she were afraid it might vanish if she thought about it too much. Laughter bubbled up around the stall, and the simple red cloth no longer looked tired. It looked proud. As the last container left the table, Ellie stared at the empty space where the food had been. For a moment, she didn't know what to feel. Then the cowboy stood, brushing snow from his coat. He knelt again, meeting her eyes just as he had before. "You did good," he said. "You both did." Ellie swallowed, her voice shaking when she spoke. "My mama's waiting at home," she said. She thought no one would come." The cowboy nodded, as if he understood that kind of waiting all too well. He took off his hat, holding it against his chest. "Then let's not keep her wondering." He tucked a little extra money into the jar, pressing Ellie's fingers closed around it before she could protest. "For Christmas," he added simply. Ellie ran all the way home, her breath puffing white in the air, her heart light despite the cold. When she pushed open the door, Mama looked up from the stove, worry written across her face. Ellie held up the empty basket, then the full jar. Tears came before words could. Mama crossed the room in 2 steps, pulling her into a tight embrace, the kind that says everything words cannot. Back in the square, the lights continued to glow, and the music played on. But something lingered there now, something warmer than decorations or noise. People carried away full hands and fuller hearts, talking about the food, about the little girl, about the cowboy who had stopped long enough to listen. And though the snow kept falling, the square felt changed, like a place where kindness had found a seat, taken a bite, and stayed just a little longer.